I'm here with Steve Sanetti from the National Shooting Sports Foundation, and we've come a long way, but great to see you here, buddy.
It's great to be here. It really is. Nice seeing you.
And you know, being here in Nuremberg and seeing the people from all over the world that are in that room for these meetings, I think it really speaks to the international spectrum and reach that this group, the World Forum on the Future of Sports Shooting Activities, really does have.
It really does. It also makes you rather proud to be an American, frankly, because we enjoy the rights to a degree that the rest of the world just can dream about. And the World Forum is a way to help the world shooting community, the 100 million sports shooters out there, have one voice on all the world stages, particularly in issues of international gun control and hunters going across borders, bringing firearms and ammunition, going around the globe hunting, and just to respect the rights of sports shooters generally, whatever the culture and whatever the laws are in the particular countries.
And it is so true. You talk to folks from New Zealand or you talk to people from Germany and they tell you don't know how lucky you're being
Exactly.
American because we don't have the rights and the firearm freedoms that you guys have back there.
That's right. We are very fortunate, and they're hard won, as you know. And I think we're serving as an example for some of the other countries. Canada, for example, who would have thought that they're rolling back a very restrictive long gun registration law and other provisions of their law that the hunters and shooters have found very onerous, and that the policemen themselves say don't help solve crimes. So I think they're taking some guidance from the American example, and we see a true wave, I think, of increased international acceptance of the legitimate role of law-abiding citizens owning and using firearms.
And you mentioned the Canadian registry, and you look at the United Nations and the fact that one of the things they want to do is push this firearms and ammunition registry. And what do you think the impact of what Canada did will have on the United Nations in its final draft of the treaty?
Canada is a good example because, again, it shows how the cultural norms are changing in countries. And another great example besides Canada, the one I point to now, is this whole Arab Spring movement, because they were saying, well, you know, we have to make sure that firearms are only used for purposes that individual governments control. Well, in the Arab world, the individual governments are now seen as the oppressors, and the people owning guns, by whatever means they acquire them, are the freedom fighters. So it's a very interesting take. It's a different world we live in now, and I think more favorable, again, to individual ownership of firearms.
And it really is, because even in the debate at the UN, you saw some of these countries who, for years we've watched, who have bought right into the UN's scheme of turn in your guns, burn the guns in this next turn. And now they are saying, hey, wait a second. What about us? What about our self-defense?
Right, and when you go to the UN, it's almost like Alice in Wonderland.
Yes.
Now, you've been there, I've been there, and you listen to some of the people talk, and it seems as though to a great number of members of the diplomatic community, firearms are bad, firearms ownership is bad, they want to do everything they can to discourage them. And some of the documents that have come out of the process from the people pushing the arms trade treaty go, I think, to a great degree beyond the four corners of the document and give a wish list of what they would like to see the UN do in the way of international control of firearms. And that's pretty frightening. So I think the people need to push back on this thing, and we are doing it. Whether we'll be successful with the Arms Trade Treaty and other UN and international gun control efforts remains to be seen, but our voices are being heard.
And another big concern, which I know former Ambassador John Bolton has talked about from the days when he was at the United Nations, he'll say if it's not about civilian ownership, put it in writing. But they never have defined what a small arm is.
And they also will not limit the treaty to the kinds of guns that the terrorists are using, which are fully automatic military arms. And we keep saying, why are you trying to regulate single-shot .22 rifles in the name of controlling terrorism? And if you look at the photographs that they always use to show examples of what they call proliferation of small arms and light weapons, they show stockpiles of AK-47s, RPG rocket launchers, hand grenades, all sorts of things like that. They don't show people in a scene where somebody is misused a target rifle or a hunting rifle. They really should not be part of the scope of the Arms Trade Treaty. If it was limited to the kinds of guns, the government-furnished fully automatic military guns that terrorists actually use, I think it could sail through the UN. But instead, the gun control people are trying to get as much as they can. They want to control every single gun down to that target pistol, the hunting rifle, the plinking gun, the duck gun. And we just think that's crazy, waste of money, waste of time, waste of effort.
And as one of the representatives from New Zealand told me today, hey, you know what it's about? It's about our guns. They don't want you to tell you that, but it's about our guns. But
True.
I thought, Steve Hunter, the best-selling author, spoke here today. He's known for his swagger and sniper novels and books. But I thought he summed it up pretty darn well, and he said one thing we can't do is let them, the anti-gunners, define us.
And that's exactly right. And by the World Forum and other related groups, other non-governmental organizations like the NRA, like the National Shooting Sports Foundation, like the Sporting Arms and Ammunition Manufacturers Institute, and all the different groups that make up the World Forum, we are sort of an association of associations of legitimate hunters and sport shooters doing what we love. And we're going to stand up for our rights, stand up who we are, and define ourselves so the world community can see that we don't pose a threat to anyone. And in fact, we are an economic driver. We provide jobs. We provide economic benefits to countries all around the world where sport shooting is welcome. And we intend to keep making that point over and over again to change the tone of the debate. And I think we'll succeed.
Steve, I got to ask you though, looking at the way things are right now, and the last meeting that we had in New York with the UN, what do you really think the odds are we're going to get a treaty this year and it's going to have civilian ownership in it?
I think the civilian ownership seems like it's going to be staying in there. They do not want to limit it to military small arms. They want to include civilian ownership and various controls over the shipment of all what they call small arms and light weapons, everything from a small pistol all the way up through 50 caliber machine guns. That being said, is it going to happen this year in a presidential election year? Do they really want to have a vote on this right in October, weeks away from a presidential election? I would guess through some sort of process, whether it's intentional or unintentional because of the slippage that naturally occurs. I don't think you'll see a vote on it this year, but we have to watch it. I know the NRA is watching it, and we got to keep our members informed so they know the dangers that are present out there. In the name of protecting society as a world, they basically say if you troglodytes just give up your guns, the world will be a much quieter, saner place, and the terrorists will leave everybody alone. We know that's baloney. But a lot of people believe that, and that's what we have to be vigilant against.
And you mentioned the election, an important election, in all the years you've been doing this and going to the United Nations. Did you ever think you'd see a president who would have said, you know what, I'll negotiate with you on this treaty? I think the UN should have more say over how we do business in the U.S.
It was dismaying to see that the United States position, which used to be, if there's going to be a treaty, it has to be on consensus, meaning everybody has to agree. All the states, all the nations have to agree, this is what we want to do. It was dismaying to see the official U.S. government position change to say, well, maybe it doesn't have to be on consensus. That being the case, you can have countries that don't have the right to bear arms the way we have, that don't recognize civilian ownership of guns, voting in the majority to, in effect, restrict or even eliminate some of the rights that we hold dear. I can't imagine as an American that our government would let that happen.
And significance of this meeting is the fact that this treaty is coming up.
Very true.
And how about this Iowa gun show? We're talking about saving our freedoms, and there they are.
Yeah,
exactly. Right there.
Exactly. This is quite a show, and it's different than America, once again, because in America, the game and the lands belong to the people. In Europe, it belongs to the landowner and the wealthy. So it's a very different tradition, and this is a very different show than the NRA show or the SHOT Show.
Yeah.
Exactly. These are very wealthy people, so you get to sort of drool over guns you'd never be able to own. But in a way, it shows you the sort of the sterile nature of what can happen when only the rich and privileged can own firearms and go hunting, as opposed in America, where it's a sport and activity that over 30 million Americans love to do.
And the reason you're here is you're fighting to make sure that generations to come enjoy the same freedoms.
You got it.